The morning light filtered through the curtains as Thomas sat in his favorite chair, the same one he'd been sitting in for the past 30 years. His hands, weathered and marked by time, trembled slightly as he held his coffee cup. Today was his 65th birthday, and for the first time in decades, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years: clarity. Most people spend their entire lives chasing shadows, running after things they believe will make them happy, fulfilled, complete. Thomas had been one of those people. He'd climbed the corporate ladder, worked 70-hour weeks, missed countless family dinners, skipped his daughter's dance recitals, and arrived late to his son's baseball games. He told himself it was all for them, for his family, to give them a better life. But sitting here now, with his children grown and living in different cities, he realized something profound. He'd been lying to himself all along. The realization didn't come all at once. It came in fragments, in quiet moments scattered across recent years. It came when his wife, Margaret, passed away 2 years ago, and he stood at her funeral surrounded by hundreds of people, yet feeling utterly alone. It came when he called his daughter on her birthday and heard the awkward pause before she said she was surprised he remembered. It came when he visited his son and realized he barely knew his own grandchildren. Thomas had everything society told him to want: a beautiful house in the suburbs, a respectable retirement fund, awards from his company displayed on the wall, a luxury car parked in the garage. Yet he felt emptier than he'd ever felt in his life. The house echoed with silence. The awards gathered dust. The car sat unused because he had nowhere particular to go. He thought back to a conversation he'd had with his father when he was just 25 years old. His father, a simple carpenter, had tried to tell him something important. Thomas remembered the scene vividly now. They were in his father's workshop, sawdust floating in the afternoon sunlight. His father had put down his tools and looked at him with those wise, tired eyes. "Son," his father had said, "I hope you're not working yourself to death for things that won't matter in the end." Thomas had brushed it off. What did his father know? He was just a carpenter who never made much money, never traveled the world, never owned a fancy car. Young Thomas had been determined to be different, to be successful, to make something of himself. Now, 40 years later, Thomas finally understood what his father had been trying to tell him. His father had died 10 years ago, surrounded by children, grandchildren, and friends whose lives he'd touched. The funeral had been packed with people sharing stories of his kindness, his wisdom, his presence. Thomas had given the eulogy, talking about his father's work ethic and dedication, but he'd missed the point entirely. His father's legacy wasn't the furniture he'd built or the houses he'd helped construct. It was the relationships he'd nurtured, the time he'd invested in people, the love he'd shared freely. Thomas set down his coffee cup and picked up an old photo album. Page after page of memories stared back at him. Family vacations where he'd been on his phone the entire time. Christmas mornings where he'd been stressed about work deadlines. His children's faces, looking at the camera with forced smiles while he stood slightly apart, always slightly apart. There was one photo that broke his heart every time he looked at it. His daughter, Emily, was maybe 7 years old, wearing a ballet costume for her first recital. She was looking up at someone off camera with pure joy and love in her eyes. But she wasn't looking at him. She was looking at her mother because Thomas hadn't made it to the recital. He'd been closing a deal that seemed so important at the time. He couldn't even remember what the deal was about now. The phone on the table buzzed. A text from Emily. "Happy birthday, Dad. Hope you're doing well." Polite, distant. The kind of message you send to an acquaintance, not a father. Thomas felt the weight of all those missed moments pressing down on his chest. He thought about his coworkers, the people he'd spent the majority of his waking hours with for 40 years. How many of them had reached out after his retirement 3 years ago? 2. Just 2. The rest had moved on, replaced him, forgotten him. The company he'd given everything to had sent a generic thank you card and a watch. A watch, as if he needed another reminder of all the time he'd wasted. Thomas stood up and walked to the window. His neighbor, Mr. Chen, was in his garden with his grandson, teaching the boy how to plant tomatoes. Mr. Chen was 72, had worked as a postal worker his whole life, lived in a modest house, drove an old car. But every weekend, his house was full of family. Every evening, he sat on his porch with his wife, holding hands and watching the sunset. Thomas had always thought Mr. Chen hadn't achieved much in life. Now he realized Mr. Chen had achieved everything that mattered. The things that truly matter in life aren't the things you can hold in your hands or put in a bank account. Thomas understood that now with painful clarity. What truly matters is the smile on your child's face when you show up for them. It's the feeling of your partner's hand in yours after a long day. It's the sound of your grandchildren's laughter filling your home. It's the deep conversations with friends who know you, really know you. It's the peace that comes from living according to your values instead of society's expectations. Thomas had chased success, but he'd never stopped to define what success meant to him personally. He'd let others define it for him. The corner office, the six-figure salary, the luxury items, the status symbols. He'd achieved all of it, and it meant nothing, absolutely nothing. He remembered his wife's last words to him in the hospital. She'd been weak, barely able to speak, but she'd squeezed his hand and whispered, "I wish we'd had more time together. Real time. Not more money, not a bigger house, not fancier vacations. Just time. Simple, precious, irreplaceable time." At 65, Thomas finally understood that life isn't measured by accomplishments or acquisitions. It's measured by moments. The problem is, moments can't be saved up or banked for later. They're either lived or lost forever. And Thomas had lost so many. He thought about all the excuses he'd made over the years. I'll spend time with them when this project is over. I'll be more present after I get this promotion. Once I reach this income level, I'll slow down. The goalposts kept moving and life kept passing by. His children grew up. His marriage became a distant companionship rather than an intimate partnership. His health declined. And for what? For a retirement he was now spending in lonely isolation? The truth Thomas had discovered was both simple and profound. We're not on this earth to accumulate things or impress people or climb ladders. We're here to connect, to love, to experience the richness of human relationships, to find meaning in simple moments of presence and authenticity. He thought about the happiest moments of his life, the ones that still made him smile. They were never the promotions or the bonuses or the awards. They were the small things. Teaching his son to ride a bike, dancing with Margaret in the kitchen at midnight, laughing until his stomach hurt at something his daughter said, watching the sunrise on a camping trip. These moments had cost nothing and meant everything. At 65, Thomas understood that your children don't need a bigger house or fancier toys. They need you, your presence, your attention, your love freely given. Your partner doesn't need expensive gifts. They need your time, your conversation, your affection, your partnership in building a life together. Your friends don't need you to be successful or impressive. They need you to be real, to be there, to show up when it matters. He understood that your job will replace you, but your family won't. Your bank account will be divided up when you're gone, but your impact on people's lives will echo through generations. The things you buy will end up in garage sales, but the love you give will be remembered forever. Thomas picked up his phone and called his daughter. When she answered, surprised to hear his voice calling instead of texting, he said something he should have said years ago. "Emily, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I wasn't there. I'm sorry I prioritized the wrong things. I know I can't get that time back, but I want to be present now if you'll let me. I want to know you, really know you. I want to be a real grandfather to your kids. I want to stop wasting time." There was silence on the other end, and then he heard her voice crack with emotion. "Dad, I'd really like that." After the call, Thomas sat back down, and for the first time in years, he cried. He cried for all the lost time, for all the moments he could never reclaim, for all the relationships he'd neglected. But he also felt something else: hope. Hope that it wasn't too late to change. Hope that he could spend whatever years he had left living according to what truly mattered. At 65, Thomas understood what many people never learn: that life isn't about the destination or the achievements or the possessions. It's about the journey, the connections, the love shared along the way. It's about being present in your own life instead of constantly rushing towards some future goal. It's about recognizing that the people in your life are gifts, not given guarantees, and treating them accordingly. He understood that you could spend your whole life building an empire and die alone, or you could live modestly and die surrounded by love. He understood that the most successful life isn't the one with the most accomplishments, but the one with the most meaning. And meaning comes from relationships, from presence, from love, from contribution to others' lives. Thomas made a decision that morning. He would spend his remaining years differently. He would visit his children regularly. He would be the grandfather he should have been. He would volunteer in his community. He would build real friendships. He would live simply and love greatly. He would prioritize people over everything else because that's what actually matters. The morning light continued to stream through the windows as Thomas sat in his chair, but something had fundamentally shifted. He was 65 years old, and for the first time in decades, he felt like he was finally starting to live. Not because he'd achieved something or acquired something, but because he finally understood what life was actually about. The lesson came late, perhaps too late to undo all the damage, but not too late to change course. Not too late to show his children that people can grow and change. Not too late to build meaningful connections. Not too late to live according to what truly matters. If you're watching this and you're younger than 65, you have something Thomas would give anything to have: time. Time to make different choices. Time to prioritize what actually matters. Time to show up for the people you love. Time to build a life rich in relationships rather than possessions. Time to define success on your own terms. Time to be present in your own life. Don't wait until 65 to understand what truly matters. Don't wait until it's too late to change course. The people in your life won't be here forever. The moments you're living right now won't come again. Your children will only be young once. Your parents will only be here for a limited time. The opportunity to build deep, meaningful relationships is available to you right now, but it won't be forever. What truly matters in life is love. It's presence. It's connection. It's the impact you have on other people's hearts. It's the memories you create together. It's showing up, being real, being there. Everything else is just noise, distraction, empty pursuit of things that won't matter when you're looking back on your life. Thomas learned this lesson the hard way, through loss and regret and painful realization. But his story doesn't have to be your story. You can choose differently. You can choose what truly matters, starting today. If this story resonated with you, if it made you think about your own priorities and choices, please subscribe to my channel. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Let's build a community of people who understand what truly matters in life and are committed to living accordingly. Hit that subscribe button and let's continue this conversation about living lives of real meaning and purpose. Thank you for watching.